Hello and welcome to the Tech and Sports Podcast. Tech and Sports is a show about how technology is revolutionizing all of the major sports as well as health and fitness. You can find it on your podcast service of choice. My name is Alex Radu, and I'm here with the fabulous Mandy Kovacs.
Hello.
And this week we're discussing whether or not AI coaches are a possibility, plus all of the biggest news from the last week, new apps or wearables, and your weekly concussion update. But before we get to that, we would really appreciate it if you would review and rate the Tech and Sports Podcast on iTunes and Google Play, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. It really does help us grow the show, and we really appreciate all of the support so far. And with that, sit back and relax, because the Tech and Sports crew is entering the game. All right, Mandy, the news.
All right, so first up is news that Facebook has gained exclusive rights to broadcast MLB games on Wednesday afternoons. So this is the first time any major North American league has made Facebook the only place to watch part of their content, and the deal was unanimously approved by league owners. So the estimated cost for these 25 games is around $30 to $35 million, which is relatively small given that the last bundle of MLB rights that was sold to broadcasters went for about $5.6 billion. So beyond baseball, Facebook also has deals to stream Champions League games and some college basketball games as well. And it's reportedly boosting its budget for live sports content after unsuccessfully bidding for the NFL's Thursday night package for the last 2 years. And in similar news, Twitter has inked a 3-year deal with Major League Soccer to stream at least 24 games live on its platform. Unfortunately, this is only available in the US right now, but global fans will be able to see all the highlight packages on the MLS Twitter feed as part of its exclusive content partnership. It's interesting to note that Facebook actually held the rights to MLS games last season, but Twitter beat it to the punch this year.
Yeah, what I find to be really interesting about all this is I think we're just not right now in the perfect storm for all of these websites like Twitter and Facebook, because like right now Twitter, at least, it's still mostly just used on your phone or something like that, and if you're not connected to Wi-Fi, you're not going to be streaming a sporting event on your phone because data, like especially if you're up here in Canada, it just costs way too much money.
Yeah,
and it would kill you. And I don't really use Facebook too much on my browser or something like that. And then if I'm at home or if I'm connected to Wi-Fi, I'm also more likely to be connected also to a bigger screen, a bigger TV, and I might not be using Twitter in that case. Yeah. Another thing too, and if you look back at what Facebook is kind of doing after they missed out on NFL's Thursday night package, the NFL as a whole, their TV contract, I believe, I want to say it's with Fox, I want to say maybe?
Yeah.
Is up in 2021.
Yes.
So that's, I think, when we're really going to see Facebook, Twitter go after these really big things. The NBA deal was just last year, so that's totally not a thing. Twitter, Facebook were not able to get even close to that. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in 2021 with the NFL, with Facebook and Twitter, and how they're able to do that, and how that maybe changes the game.
Yeah, absolutely, because there are quite a few broadcast contracts that are up in the next couple of years. I think even hockey might be as well. It might have a couple years left, so really interesting stuff. And kind of continuing that conversation as well, so all of these tech companies are getting on board, but Netflix insists that it won't ever follow suit. So at a rare press event at its headquarters in California, Netflix CEO Reed Hastings said that the platform has no intention of entering the battle for live news and sports broadcasting. Instead, it's keeping its focus on creating great content like movies and TV shows, which it calls its crown jewels. So, I mean, Facebook and Twitter are on board, but Netflix is apparently never going to be on board.
I don't think Netflix needs to.
No, I agree.
Netflix already has so much, and it's also never made money. We have to keep that in mind as well. So it doesn't necessarily, it has billions of dollars to throw around at places, but it's doing that already, and I don't think this is just in the cards for Netflix.
Yeah, agreed. All right, next up is another quick hit. Adidas just announced that it sold 1 million shoes made out of recycled ocean plastic in 2017. And to follow that up, the company now plans to 3D print 100,000 shoes in 2018 as it continues to explore innovative materials and production methods. I don't have much more than that, unfortunately. And I mean, we've talked about Adidas going in this 3D printed direction before, but it's interesting to see the company actually commit to such a large number of 3D printed shoes, and maybe this is the real future.
Yeah, well, we've talked a bit in the past about how this is the first time in really decades that the method of creating shoes is changing now to 3D printing. And this is kind of an angle I never really thought of, but there is so much plastic out there that is not being used. If they can recycle it into shoes, then that's awesome. Yeah. That's great. Like, that's a really awesome way. Then it's like, hey, go buy an Adidas shoe.
Yeah, I respect that.
Even if other companies, it's just, this is how it's cheaper because it's already been used and it's recycled. But if it still works the same, then why not? That's a really cool way for them to make shoes and also, help the world.
Yeah, save their future. All right, next up, Pittsburgh startup Diamond Kinetics has expanded beyond its bat sensors and released a new product. So for those who are unfamiliar, Diamond Kinetics developed bat sensors that are used by more than 15 MLB teams and 52 NCAA programs to analyze a batter's swing. So in fact, one MLB franchise actually drafted a player last year based on their swing tracker data that was based off of Diamond Kinetics technology. So now the company has unveiled Pitch Tracker, which is a smart baseball that measures velocity, spin rate, extension, time to the plate, timing delivery, as well as reach back to release, to give pitchers previously unknown information about their throwing mechanics. So the company is using all of their same technology from the bat sensors, but now it's just in a baseball and geared specifically towards pitchers.
I mean, this seems it's one of those just technologies that kind of felt like it was a matter of time until it happens. Like, it's not a surprise. It's cool. We're going to just keep seeing more.
Yeah. I haven't found any prices, but I mean, I can't expect a baseball to be that expensive. So this might actually be accessible to amateurs and people that just want to lob a ball around but want to, get their metrics.
Yeah, just play around with the stats.
Yeah, so I'll look into that. All right. Next up is more of a PSA. So Cisco is hosting its inaugural Tech for Good hockey tournament on April 7th in Oakville, Ontario. So the tournament is raising money to better deliver virtual education and youth mental health and wellness services to students in Indigenous communities in remote northern areas in Canada. So there's going to be more than 250 players and 18 teams. And some NHL alumni are going to make appearances as well, like Brian Trottier, Rick Natras, Gary Lehman, Tom Fergus, and Aaron Asham. So each team has to fundraise at least $10,000 to enter the tournament. And once they're in, they'll actually get to draft one of those alumni players onto their team. And there will be many more announced in the next couple of weeks before it starts. So some of the teams already confirmed include people from Cisco, TELUS, Scotiabank, Shaw Communications, Home Hardware, and Ernst & Young. So some pretty powerful people and companies here if anyone wants to check this out, and might be in the Oakville area in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, and also for, I guess, listeners that are not based in Toronto, it is, I guess Oakville is a suburb of Toronto.
Yeah.
So it's just outside the city, if you're in the area or planning on visiting. But that's cool. Always cool to see good, donation type things.
And good cause, right?
A good cause, be supported, especially when it's through sports. And,
Yeah, we love it. All right, so now we're going to move on to the hottest tournament right now, March Madness, which officially began last week on Thursday. I know Alex is pumped. I'm not so much, but, I'm here. I made a bracket. It's not going too badly, I guess. But so for those who want to watch, all the games are on Turner Sports and CBS, or in Canada, you can watch it on TSN. But for those of you who don't have cable, the March Madness website and apps for your phone, Xbox, Roku devices, or Amazon Fire TV are also all offering live streaming.
It is important to note that all of that streaming is not available in Canada. It's only if you're in the U.S.
That's true. So you might need to hack the system a little bit, but we're not advocating for that whatsoever. Okay, but so moving on to our brackets, we both got ours going, and we hope that all of our listeners, your brackets are going well also. But so I wish I had come across the next story before I made mine, because website Sportsline does a computer simulation every year of the March Madness tournament, and it's nailed some pretty massive upsets in the last few years. So they simulated the tournament 10,000 times to create the perfect bracket. And in fact, they've actually called 9 of the last 12 upsets by double-digit seeds in the first round over the past 2 years. So this year, they ran, like I said, thousands of simulations, and by the time you're listening to this, you'll probably know if they're right or not.
And, well, so at the time of this recording, the first day of basketball has happened, and so they did predict that Stephen F. Austin, the 14th seed against the 3rd seed Texas Tech, would win, and they were incorrect.
Yes, they were.
And then they also predicted Virginia Tech over Alabama, and Bama also won that one. So it just kind of goes to show that even computers are not always correct.
Are you trying to insinuate something for our discussion, Alex?
Yeah, well, we'll be discussing this a lot later. But until I guess all these college athletes are robots, they're not going to be able to fully predict what happens because, I mean, they're wrong right here. I mean, honestly, the Virginia Tech Alabama pick was a 50-50 shot, anyways.
That's
so
fair.
it's that could have gone either way. Mm-hmm. So it's cool to see all these we talk about simulated sports and trying to make predictions all the time, and it's always really fun to look at them. For instance, 8:35 or 5:38. Sorry, 5:38. The website. They mostly do political things. They also do a lot of sports. They did the same thing, and our boss Brian Jackson, he followed their numbers and making his picks, and he only got one wrong yesterday.
Yeah, like he's killing it.
So it is, and he would have gotten all 16 games correct on the first day if it wasn't for that huge Arizona upset. So it is interesting to see kind of what, computers can do right, but it is still giving a percentage. For instance, Loyola Chicago beat Miami, but Miami only had a 51% chance to win, so it was kind of easy to pick the underdog there to win.
True.
So it's kind of it's cool to see what computers kind of do, and they just enhance our human insight, which will be the topic of our discussion later.
Agreed. But so for the East region, the one other upset that they predicted is that number 7 seed Arkansas will fall to 10th seeded Butler in the first round because this happens 62% of the time in their simulations. And then so in the East, they're calling for a Villanova and Purdue championship game, with Villanova moving on to the finals. But for the rest of it, go check it out online.
Yeah, also, it's not like that Villanova-Purdue prediction is super intense when they're their 1 and 2 seed.
No, that's not coming out of left field or anything, but, I mean, you never know. Upsets can happen.
We'll see.
Yeah, all right. Well, that was it for the news today. I hope everyone enjoyed it. We're now going to move on to new apps and wearables.
Yeah, so again, it's not a pretty heavy week when it comes to the wearables. Biggest news started with Fitbit. So Fitbit has announced a few new products this week. The main one being the new Fitbit Versa, which is a smartwatch that was leaked a few weeks ago. We talked about it a little bit on the show. The Versa is essentially the more affordable smartwatch in the Fitbit lineup compared to the Ionic, and it's going to be going for $249.95 here in Canada, which is relatively cheap. I believe the Ionic is $300 something here in Canada.
Yeah, I think it just got dropped to $300.
Yeah, and so the selling point here is that the Versa it's going to be cheaper, and that it looks a little cleaner. It's not as busy. It's a very simple, almost Pebble-like device, which is expected a little bit because they did buy Pebble. So yeah, that's kind of, there's really honestly not much to say with the Versa. It's going to be, if you want a cheaper smartwatch from Fitbit, then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, both all the same features as the Ionic and everything. So
exactly. And so next up, something a little more different, I guess. Fitbit also announced a new female health tracking that lets women log their menstrual cycle, record symptoms, compare their previous cycles, and see all of their health and fitness on the app. This will be available on device for the Fitbit Versa, Ionic, and to all Fitbit app users. So,
as a woman.
Yes.
That's just funny. I mean, I don't really see the point of it, because if you've ever looked up period trackers on any app store that exists, there are hundreds of them, probably even thousands. And it's so easy to download those, and there are so many free versions that give you really cool features. I mean, the only thing I would say with this is that if Fitbit is creating its own app that can now be shared on, like you said, all of their devices and stuff, then maybe it's a little bit more convenient to track your menstrual cycle on that instead of having a whole separate app. But I'm indifferent.
Yeah, I think it's more so just a convenient thing, where Fitbit wants to get every single type of health tracking they can onto the Fitbit app, so then it's just another tab. It's just another thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So it's really more so just hey, instead of having to go open another app, you can just click on a different tab in the app you're already in, hypothetically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll check it out, report back, see if it's any better than some of the other ones that are out there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, good for them, at least, trying to go down this road. Why not?
Yeah. And then lastly, there's the Fitbit Ace, which is a Fitbit designed for kids 8 and older, and just basically a Fitbit Alta, but for kids, and that'll be out in the Q2 of 2018 for $129 here in Canada. And I didn't mention it earlier, but the Versa should be out this April. And then kind of next up, it's not really a big thing because we can't use it here in Canada, but if you are watching March Madness in the U.S., there's a virtual reality element via Turner Sports, CBS Sports, and the NCAA. You can purchase it via the Oculus Store or Google Play Store, and you can buy a virtual courtside seat for $2.99 USD per game, or a tournament pass for $19.99. So yeah, this was only available in the US, so I haven't been able to test it out or do anything with it, but just kind of a heads up if you're living there.
Yeah, cool feature. Why not?
Yeah, and then kind of last up, so Dimension Data has revealed its new health and wellness mobile app for cycling. So as we've covered before, Dimension Data is a big tech company, and it has its own professional cycling team based in Africa called Team Dimension Data, and it also handled all the fan and team data for the Tour de France last year. So we talked a lot about it with them last summer. So this app tracks the daily physical and mental performance of the team's 39 World Tour and Continental riders located in 10 countries. Data collected from the team, from team members, includes geographical location and time zones, quality and quantity of sleep, response to training, muscle soreness, as well as mood, motivation, and stress levels. To find the mental data, Dimension Data partnered with the Australian-based MIK Health, and riders would then complete an assessment via their mobile device every day, prompted by the app to assess mental data. So I guess it's just probably like a 5-question questionnaire that would take 2 seconds. So this app isn't available to consumers like us, but it is cool to learn about how professional teams or organizations are using data to assess athletes and to reach peak training ability.
Yeah, like we've always said, we appreciate when these companies try to track the mental side of things, because it is so, like, if for an athlete, it is so much more than their athletic prowess or their actual physicality of being, you know? So good for Dimension Data. Kind of annoying that we won't ever get a chance to test this out. Maybe we will, but definitely not right now. But also, I'm not a professional cyclist and I hate biking, so I probably wouldn't use it anyways.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, so that's it for new apps and wearables this week. On to the concussion update. So every day, a large portion of athletes with a history of repetitive head trauma are battling with a progressive neurodegenerative brain disease called CTE. Symptoms of CTE include blurred vision, dementia, depression, headaches, memory loss, and mood swings. There is no cure, and it only gets worse with time. This is the #1 issue in sports, so every week we'll be updating you on what is happening in the world of concussion prevention. So this week, we have a new piece of concussion technology from researchers at the University of Calgary who have developed a portable brain imaging system. They're calling it a near-infrared spectroscopy, and it supposedly can measure communication in the brain by measuring oxygen levels in the blood. So this device is a cap, think those old-school soccer goalie helmets, with small lights and sensors connected to a computer. An athlete who is being tested for a concussion would put it on, and it can measure brain activity, while the athlete looks at a picture or goes through a simple activity. So UFC scientist Jeff Dunn explained it to the CBC. When the brain activates, blood flow goes up, but oxygen levels also go up, so the blood actually becomes redder as the brain activates. We measure that, so we shine a light in, and we can see that change in oxygen level and measure the change in absorption, he said. So Dunn further explained that he hopes those images can show a connection between symptoms and abnormalities in the brain that would help doctors identify treatment protocols and recovery times. Obviously, this technology and method is still very new. Currently, there's no universally accepted way to get an image of a concussion, so maybe this will be it. Well, I mean, there's still going to be years of development on it. So next up for UFC is working with the Alberta's Children's Hospital, so they'll be able to see how this method works over time. So this is kind of just another example of what people are trying to do with concussions. I think it further drives the point home that there's not just going to be one solution to concussions. It's not a one fix for everything. Mm-hmm. There's so many different levels of it. If you suffer one already, all the different ways to treat it, and then also prevention as well. So we always kind of toe the line between, is it this prevention or is this kind of, to help with treatment?
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about so many different technologies of how to potentially measure for a concussion. Like we've covered SyncThink's eye test. And then, now this is kind of a brain test sort of thing. I would love to have all of these devices kind of lined up and tested on one person and see which one is the most accurate. Like which one gets that most, or gets closest to the actual point. You know what I mean? And just see which one's better. Is it better to measure from eye movement? Is it better to measure from brain waves or blood in the brain? Who knows?
What I think's even interesting to that, taking that element, is that we work in tech, and so many tech companies, they package together a bunch of different things to sell to customers or to businesses. So it would be interesting to see if this is portable, if this is usable, if you have a combination of these technologies put together. And it's like, okay, maybe one's better than the other, but it's still like, okay, you can get like a 70% view into, what's going on with one of them. Maybe that goes up to 80% because you add the other one on top of it.
Yeah, if you use 2 or 3.
Yeah, so it's like, if all these technologies are just simple wearables type things, and like they are able to be transported to all of these games and to, all these different places, it'd be really cool to see like a combination of them.
Yeah.
Because that would really, like, this isn't preventing concussions, but it could be much better at, identifying them and coming up with treatment processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And saving someone potentially like pain down the road for not diagnosing properly one concussion that they had.
Yeah, just because I think right now, and because we're still learning, there's still so much about the brain that we don't know yet. And the fact is that there's not going to be one solution that is 100% going to be able to identify anything.
Right.
So I do like this cool package would be awesome. Like that'd be a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that was it for our concussion update. So now we've got a really interesting discussion coming your way this week. So I was trolling the internet, as one often does, and came across a USA Today story talking about how the NFL is sharing its player wearable data across the league. So we covered this last week, if you remember. But just as a quick update, so the NFL uses Zebra technology trackers, which are mandatory for all players to wear, and they're about the size of a quarter or a loonie if you're in Canada, and it basically is just shoved in a player's pads. And so this Zebra tech is offered to teams in an analytics package as well. So teams can use the insights to evaluate things like incoming prospects, they can appraise their own players, and they can target free agents. So every play is tracked, so any team can queue up film with the corresponding metrics and see the data work in real time. It can tell you who's fastest, who's creating the most separation on the field, and with the tech installed in stadiums as well, you can even get data on trends from the surfaces and conditions in each stadium. The tech and analytics program can also help players pace themselves in injury recovery and assist in scouting. So that's a lot of potentially very useful information coming from Zebra Technologies. And in this article, one NFL general manager from an NFC team is quoted saying, "Sometimes I feel like we're going to lose our jobs to artificial intelligence."
So that's how we're kind of tying in this discussion.
Yeah.
It's not we're tweaking that quote because we both agree that an NFL general manager saying that is not only ignorant but just ridiculous, because a general manager, they have one of the safest jobs. They have to manage people. AI is not going to manage people anytime soon. So that's a ridiculous thing for a GM to say. But so instead we're going to replace that with coaches.
Yeah, because it got us thinking, could AI actually replace coaches? And I mean, I think we both agree it's definitely not today, it's definitely not tomorrow, maybe not even a couple years from now. But as we see more players warm up to the idea of tracking wearables, and more data collection, tech, as well as tech being put into stadiums and footballs, could we actually one day see AI, based off of all of this data, eventually replace a coach or a manager? So that's our debate today.
And I vote absolutely not, but Mandy's going to play devil's advocate here. Yeah,
because I mean, I don't necessarily think this will happen either, but it is a really interesting discussion, or to look at the other side, because I mean, it kind of could. Anyways, so coaches and managers, obviously, I know they do a lot more than just put together lineups. They draw plays and scout prospects. But I'm going to focus on some of those like game time decisions. So a website called Advanced NFL Stats collected every single study on fourth down decisions and determined that in almost every situation, teams are better off being aggressive and going for the conversion attempt rather than kicking. And so then an article in the New York Times basically said the same thing after analyzing 10 years of NFL data. And really, you can apply the same model to any sport too. So after analyzing years of data from games and players in different situations, you can pretty much come up with the probability numbers for what to do in every scenario. So like if you're down by 1 goal in hockey and you're in the final minute or two of a game, is it actually the best decision to pull your goalie? So these are old stats, but one analyst looked at this and published his results in the Journal of Quantitative Analysis in Sports. And so he studied 4 years of hockey between the 2002 and 2007 seasons, and found that if there are, let's say, 100 instances of a goalie being pulled, there will be 34 goals scored, of which about 10 of those goals would come from the team that's down to tie the game. So that's basically saying that there's a 1 in 10 chance of actually tying the game when a team pulls their goalie in the final minute or two of a game that they're down by just 1 goal. So we have all of this data, and with AI becoming way more sophisticated really every day, so why couldn't you have an AI coach a team? I mean, if we're looking at a coach's job during a game, they're reacting to whatever happens. So AI could do that just as fast by analyzing all the potential outcomes based on what's happened in previous games in previous years and make a decision based on what's most likely to happen or what has the most chance of success. Think of it how IBM's AI computer Watson, a couple years ago, it killed it at chess. They set it up against the world's top chess player and it won. So, I mean, wouldn't this kind of be the same thing? Like hockey or football or basketball or soccer or whatever sport you want to talk about, it would kind of become a chess game, right? Like the AI would be analyzing all the data that it has from previous years and just applying it to whatever situation it's in. So, I mean, I think it's possible. Will it ever happen? I kind of doubt it. But I mean, it was really interesting kind of diving into some of these stats because they are out there and AI could look at this.
So I think it's an interesting point because I think there's no doubt that the stats are going to help because you bring up the 4th down decisions and that's what the Eagles did this year in the NFL.
Yeah.
They had that stat, they realized that's what was happening and they did it, but it was still making a coach decision.
Fair enough.
Like you still need that human element. Like to call those plays because every play is not going to be a 60% chance or 100% chance. It's a 50% chance.
Right.
And if for some reason it goes to a 49% chance, then that's no longer the most probable thing to happen. So an AI might not pick it or something like that. I don't love the AI killing it at chess type thing because I think the better example would, or like the counter to that would be, or the comparison to that would be like playing AI in like Madden or something like that, because it's not like AI is actually going to be controlling the humans on the field.
No.
Like they can't make up for human error, while in chess it's the AI making every decision and every move.
Right, but just like a human, like let's say your quarterback misses a throw, right? And then you have to reevaluate, okay, what are we going to do next? Let's say this is the 3rd down or something, right? I mean, an AI could just do that.
Yeah, but an AI also can't account for like throwing a ball to someone and it just slips through their fingers. Even if it's perfect.
But then it would get new probability numbers and adjust itself.
I guess. I mean, so my whole thing is the reasoning why you couldn't is because you still need to be able to make those decisions, and AI isn't going to be able to account for what an athlete sees in the opponent's eyes or how a coach may mix it up. I mean, like, an AI is not going to be able to understand the human element of, hey, this young team is playing in Miami and they went out last night. And the guys on Miami are looking at them and be like, that dude is hungover.
That's fair.
Like it's totally skewing that person's stats for one game because they had a rough night. And that you see that happen all the time in professional sports.
Yeah.
You see players going out and then being sluggish the next day.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's like you're not like that's just a blimp in the radar of data. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to be able to necessarily account for that. But humans can. And then you kind of look at some other things. For instance, look at the Patriots and Bill Belichick. He looks at all the stats and analysis and the stuff that his opponents are known for doing, and he takes one of the big ones away, and that's how he's such a good coach. So to beat him, you have to mix it up by doing something you don't do often. So one could argue that an AI is not going to recognize that the thing they do 20% of the time that's not always successful is the right thing to do against that particular coach.
Fair enough. So that's probably your best point.
There's a ton of different of reasons. Mm-hmm. So, and then second, like to AI, for it to be truly successful, and we talk about this in tech a lot, is you need lots and lots of data. And the fact is a sports season isn't long enough to collect the data necessary, and injuries to certain players can skew it after, like, let's say you have after like halfway through the season, and it drastically changes how the team is playing. Mm-hmm. The NFL is the best example because 16 games is just like, let's just be real, it's not enough to collect enough data to truly have this big pool of data. And NFL teams, especially, they change so much every year. Mm-hmm. So you can look at the Cleveland Browns over the last 5 years, or here, a better example, you can look at the LA Rams over the last 5 years, and the teams have changed so much. They've had 6-7 quarterbacks. You're not going to be able to accurately predict from that data just because it's changed so much.
Okay, counterpoint to that, though. Like, I get it, and I agree to an extent, but I think players are almost like a variable in this equation, though. Like, the AI would be taking those into account, but I think it would also be looking at just game scenarios. You know, like, what happens if you're at the 55-yard line on your third down or something, and you're down by 10 points? Like, that has most definitely happened at some point in history before, you know? And so we would be taking situations like that, and that's the foundation of its equation, and then you're adding in the variables and the players afterwards.
So what I think to that is that just is going to be what's actually happening. It's going to be a tool that coaches can use.
Fair.
So our boss, Brian Jackson, this is the second shout out he's gotten in this podcast.
Brian, woo!
Has put it best earlier this week when we were all talking about it, when he said that, what if all stats just gave you like a confidence percentage? Like, this is the scenario, this is it analyzing, and it's like you have a 60% chance of being successful here. Because if you go back to the news that we were talking about earlier, even the sports line, they can run the simulation 10,000 times, and they still got 2 games wrong in the first day.
I knew that'd come back to bite me.
So it's not a perfect. The problem is that there are still humans on the field, and they're still making human decisions that a computer's not going to be able to. And mistakes, like just dropping a ball, crumbling under pressure, missing a shot. They could be, have a 99% field goal or free throws percentage, and then still miss that one shot because the humans aren't perfect.
Well, shout out to Paolo. It doesn't. Don't the Vikings have like one of the best kickers in the league, and he misses it all the time by choking?
In the playoffs, yeah. So it's like it's accounting for all that. Yeah. So that's where I still think that. You can get to a situation where it's like, yeah, here on this 4th down, in the past, you have like a pretty good, like, you have like a 60%, 70% shot, and you're like, you know what, I trust my guys, I think we're gonna do it. So I still think it's just gonna be augmenting the coaches. I still think they're so important. I mean, sure, are there gonna be maybe, lower level coaches or trainers who their job is to analyze something? Are their jobs maybe gonna be in jeopardy? Potentially, but you still need an analysis.
That's fair. And I mean, I think there's also the point, too, that there are so many coaches. So, like, maybe, I guess as a weird compromise, maybe this won't replace, like, your head coach or your general manager of a team, but maybe it would replace that assistant coach that is just there for, like, team morale or something, you know? And instead of having that voice in his ear, a coach would have this AI probability in his tablet.
The problem is that team morale is then also such a huge important factor.
As long as you have your head coach, you're fine, though.
That's so not true, though.
I know. I'm really trying here.
Yeah, it's like for instance, like you look at Tyronn Lue, head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, or LeBron, whoever you really think is the coach. Like, Tyronn Lue always gets criticism. Like, I don't think the Cavs have a playbook or anything like that. But then you do hear how he's a good locker room manager, and he has been managing personalities. So it's though there's so many parts of being a coach and of all those jobs that aren't just going to be analytics.
But I mean, hey, it's AI for a reason, though. What if it just becomes super smart and it can also give pep talks?
I mean, that's going to be.
I think you're underestimating AI.
That's like the super science fiction version of whatever we're talking about.
There's an AI robot that just got citizenship in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, well,
turned into a man because apparently women can't coach professional sports. There you go. That was a joke, everybody. I hope you know that. Please empower women. I want to see a coach. Anyways. All right. Well, that was it for our discussion today, I guess. I don't know if we really ever came to a conclusion.
Yeah, we did. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. I'm just now stuck in my devil's advocate position, and I really want to win. But no, I think you're right, Alex. So that's it for today's episode. Thanks to everyone who listened. Just a reminder that we're also now in a daily format at Tech and Sports Daily, if you'd rather listen to us that way. You can follow us on Twitter at ITB Tech and Sports, or our personal accounts at Mandy V. Kovacs and Alex T. Redu. And if you really like us enough, we would love if you could give us a rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you listen to us. So once again, thanks everybody.